In this video, we are looking at 9 comma rules. And the foldable piece for this one looks something like this when you print it. And you will need to cut around on the bold lines. They look very thick, but once you cut them out, you will see that they don't look as prominent. And when assembled, this piece looks like this. I just took a picture. I will also post a picture of this in the actual notebook, but this is what you will have when you assemble it. This is called a flip book because each page flips up. And I've chosen the 9 comma rules that I've always taught to students. I've had really good luck teaching these rules. I've never had any problems with students not being able to pass an English test with these rules. So there are 9 of them, and you have that 10th piece, which is your cover page. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Again, you cut on the bold lines. This line is actually a fold line. Those lighter, thinner lines are fold lines. So you'll need to fold these pieces on that 3/4 inch margin. But to get us started, we need to go through and put the rules in the flip book. This is one that I would recommend assembling at the end. In other words, put all of your writing on there before you try to assemble the flip book. Just my advice, but you can do it however you want to. The first one in order is talking about a non-essential appositive. And I would be willing to bet that a large percentage of Americans probably could not define appositive. So let's start with that, and then we'll work into the example. This one says to use a comma around an appositive if the appositive is not essential to the noun it belongs to. So let's start with a definition of an appositive. And my handwriting is bad on a good day, but on this iPad it is nothing to write home about. So I'll do my best. Hopefully it's not too hard to decipher. An appositive is a word or phrase that describes, not a phase. Sorry, I can't speak and write at the same time, so let me do a little bit of chunking here. A word or phrase that describes or explains. It's actually a good strategy to teach to your students. Have them get a few words in their heads and write those down, and then get the next few words. And the next few words are a noun. An appositive is a word or phrase that describes or explains a noun. So always make sure that we define the words in the actual rule if they're not common words. So here's an example that I just made up. Tom Banks, and of course we would capitalize Tom Banks, that's a proper noun. The tall man in the suit and notice I'm using a comma before that phrase and after it, is the president of the company. And of course, we always stop a sentence with some sort of punctuation mark. In this case, I'm using a period or a full stop. So you notice that there are commas here and here. And this piece in the middle, between those commas, is the appositive. So this is the appositive. The rule says to use a comma around an appositive. So the comma is sort of setting off that appositive from the rest of the sentence. If the appositive is not essential to the noun it belongs to. So here's the crux of that rule. We could leave out the appositive. So if I left out that part in the box, would it change the main idea of the sentence? We could leave out the appositive without changing the main idea of the sentence. Tom Banks is still the president, whether we describe him or not. And because we could leave out the appositive, it's not necessary. We use the commas. The commas are there to pause our thinking, give us a little more description, and then resume the sentence. And we'll talk in just a minute about what commas do. What is the purpose of the comma itself, the punctuation mark. So we could leave out this appositive without changing the meaning of this sentence. And because it is not essential, it's not necessary to have it in there, we use the commas. Okay, rule number 2 is the noun of address. And that's this one, purple one. It says to use a comma after a noun of address. And again, you have a fold line here. So here is the definition of a noun of address. I know a noun is a person, place, or thing, but what is a noun of address? Well, I know that an address is often used to give a location, if you're talking about a street address. But if you're talking about a person of address, a noun of address is the name of a person being spoken to. And I've had students struggle with this just a little bit. So I told them a noun of address is the listener. It's the person who's doing the listening, not the speaking. So here's an example. Anna, do you want tea or coffee? Who is the listener in this question? And notice I used a question mark. I'm asking a question. Anna is the listener. So Anna is the noun of address. And after her name, we put the comma. So what if I ask the question this way? Do you want tea or coffee? Anna. So I'm still asking a question. Anna is still the listener. That's the noun of address. That hasn't changed. And so this time the comma comes before Anna. What we're doing here is separating the noun of address from the rest of the sentence. We're offsetting that noun of address. The next rule is the yes, no, well, and to rule. Use a comma after yes, no, and well at the beginning of a sentence. Use commas around the word to, T-O-O. Now there's one thing I want to clarify about this part of the rule. I should have typed it in, but I just forgot it. When it means also. And I'll show you an example of that in just a second. So here's the first example. Yes, I love math. Because that's showing more than average emotion, I'll use an exclamation point. No, I do not like snakes. And you could use an exclamation point here if you wanted to. Depends on how much emotion is behind that. Well, it is raining again. Again, you could use an exclamation point if that's more than average emotion. Depends on what you're trying to convey. But notice that comma after those yes, no, well introductions. Sam and Jorge are going to. They're going also. So I could substitute the word also right here, and it would make sense. Sam and Jorge are going also. Sam and Jorge are going to. They, too, are going. They also are going. In this case, we need a comma in front of to and after to. We separate that word to from the sentence. Here is where you would not use a comma. So think about this sentence and whether or not I could put also in there. Let's suppose that someone is making me a cup of coffee and I tell them that I want creamer in my coffee. And they just keep pouring the creamer, just on and on. And I say, sorry, my iPad is not acting right. I'm not sure what's going on. That is too much. Okay, so that's strong emotion. Could I substitute the word also for to? That is also much. No. In this case, to does not mean also. It's an extreme amount. So the meaning changes with the word to sometimes. Unless you're talking about also, you do not need the comma. Okay, the next one is the comma for dates. Use a comma between the day and year in a date. Use a comma after the year if the date is in the middle of the sentence. And I've found that folks usually know the first part of this rule, but not the last part. So let's make sure that we get them both here. The date, April 4th, 2024. It makes sense to my mind to put the comma there to separate out all those numbers. Anna started English class. We capitalize English. It's a proper adjective, refers to England. On April 4th, so we know that we need the comma there. 2024 at the high school. There's a comma missing here. We need a full stop at the end of that sentence. But because this date is in the middle of the sentence like that, we need the comma after the date as well. So this one gets 2 commas because that date is right in the middle of that sentence. We need the second comma. Okay, the next one is not place names. It's actually comma in series. Use a comma between items in a list of 3 or more. Use a comma before the conjunction. So here, using that model representation of a sentence, we have a noun, a noun, a noun, a conjunction, and a noun. And I'm going to use this pattern to build several examples here. We're just going to use phrases. We know that when we have that same part of speech over and over, some punctuation has to be involved. So, for example, peanuts, that's a thing. Pecans, almonds, I need a conjunction, and cashews. So this is a list of different types of nuts. Peanuts, pecans, almonds, and cashews. So those commas get dropped in there between those things in the list. These nouns could be people. For example, Beth, Peter, Yoko, and Ada. We're separating the names in this list. Think about one more example here. Let me think it through. Let's say berries, ice cream, sprinkles, or glaze. Maybe these are things that I could put on my waffles. So I have berries. Would you put the comma between ice and cream? Or are those two words referring to the same thing? They're referring to the same thing. So that's one noun. There's a noun. It's plural, but it still counts as one. And the conjunction is or. 3 or more items in a list. If you just have 2 items in a list, you will have this situation, and you do not need the comma if you just have 2 of them. But as soon as you get the line of things together, the similar things together, then you have to start using the commas. Okay, the next one is place names. Use a comma between the name of a city and state or country. Use a comma after the state or country if the place name is in the middle of a sentence. So again, we have two nouns side by side. And very often when that happens, in fact, every time that I can think of, punctuation will be involved. So for example, Knoxville is a city in the state of Tennessee. And so we separate those two things with a comma. Rome is a city in the country of Italy. So we separate the city from the country with a comma. We will visit Madrid, Spain on March 6th, 2025 for vacation. Full stop. So my eye immediately goes to this. I have two nouns side by side, and so I'm going to need some punctuation. Comma between the city and the country. And because it's in the middle of the sentence, I need the comma after the country. I also have a date. I need the comma between the day and the year. And because it's in the middle of the sentence, I need the comma after the year. So I sneaked two rules in there on this one, but it's the city-country rule that we're interested in particular. Okay, we're almost there. We have the red one that is dealing with quotation marks. And this one is a little bit lengthy. So let's first define quotation marks. It says to use a comma inside quotation marks. So what are quotation marks? First of all, they look like this. And they go around the exact words a speaker says. They are always found in pairs. So that's the definition of quotation marks. So here's a very famous quote. Patrick Henry said, so I capitalize first and last name, Patrick Henry said, comma, and I have no idea why I said inside. I want to change that to with. I know what I was thinking. I was thinking about punctuation in my quotation marks, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But I should have said with. Use commas, use a comma with quotation marks. Patrick Henry said, comma, and here comes the beginning of the quote. So I'm going to capitalize that first word of the quote. Give me liberty. Give me freedom. Comma, because there is a compound sentence there. Or, little g, give me death. Patrick Henry was one of the revolutionary heroes, and he was saying either let me be free from King George in England or let me die. That's how strongly he felt about the situation. Give me liberty or give me death. And I have no idea what this is. Let's just ignore that for now. It's something on this new version of GoodNotes. So I'm not sure what that is. Okay, here's another example. Let's open some quotes. Who is ready for lunch? And that's a question. Notice that I capitalized the first word of the quote, and I put the question mark in there. Anne asked. Full stop. There is no comma in this one because we have that question mark sitting there. Check this one out. We, capitalize because I'm opening a quote, will leave at noon. Close quote. Sorry. John said. Open quote, because he's still speaking, and return at midnight. Full stop. Close the quotes. Because these quotations always come in pairs. This set goes with this one, and this one goes with this one. Always in pairs. But this one needs some commas. Do you see right here, there's no punctuation mark there. There's no question mark, no exclamation point, because John is still speaking in this part of the sentence. And here's where the quotation mark comes after the comma. The comma is going to sit right in here. You also need one after said because you're continuing what John said. So in this situation, we do need the commas. Quotation marks are very tricky. They require a lot of practice, lots and lots of practice to master those. Okay, then we have introductory phrases. And I've lost that one. There it is. Use a comma after long introductory phrases. An introductory phrase is a group of words that sets the stage for the main part of the sentence. So here are some examples. On Independence Day, and that's capitalized because it's the name of a holiday, we grill burgers. Full stop. So the main idea of this sentence is that we grill burgers. That's the important part. The burgers are always the important part. The introductory phrase, it's not essential to the main idea. It just tells a little bit more. It sort of sets the stage for this story that I'm telling you. So the comma goes right there. This is called an introductory phrase. And these are very often prepositional phrases. And if you aren't familiar with a prepositional phrase yet, It's okay. You will be. So just bear with me. That will come on another lesson. For my birthday, I want ice cream. Homemade ice cream. And this is an exclamation point for me because I love homemade ice cream. So the main idea is that I want ice cream. The introductory phrase to set the stage is for my birthday. And that's where your comma will go. On October 12th, 1492, Columbus discovered a new world. At least it was new to the Europeans. Full stop. So the introductory phrase is on October 12th, 1492. We know we need a comma after a date if it's in the middle of the sentence. We also need a comma after the day of any date. But the on October 12, 1492 is the introductory phrase. And let me just highlight those for you. That helps you to see it a little bit more. Well, this one doesn't want to highlight. There we go. These are not essential to the sentence. You would still have a sentence without those green parts, but they help to explain what's happening in the sentence a little bit more. One more, and that is about compound sentences. Use a comma to join two sentences together. The comma goes before the conjunction. So consider these two. Actually, before I do this, let me give you a list of conjunctions. If you can remember, this acronym, Boys Fan, it will help you remember the conjunctions. B stands for but, O stands for or, Y is yet, S is so, F is for, A is and N is nor. So those are very common conjunctions. Helped me to remember it with the acronym. So consider these two sentences. Dogs are noisy. Full stop. Cats are quiet. At least sometimes. So we could join, let me see if I can find, yes, there's a green pen. We could join these two sentences with a conjunction because these two sentences are very closely related. You wouldn't want to just stick any two sentences together, but you can join these two. And the conjunctions I have to choose from are right here. So I need to pick one of those to fill that space to join these two sentences together. I could use and works a lot of the time, but there's another one that I like a little bit better. So let's see what we can do here. Dogs are noisy, but, and because I'm not starting a new sentence, I'm going to lowercase that c. Cats are quiet. Full stop. The conjunction is but, and the comma goes before the conjunction. So what we have here is called a compound sentence. It's compound because it has two sentences in one. Oops. Here's another example. It started to rain. So I rolled up the window. A lot of times on tests, they will give you a sentence like this, a compound sentence with no comma, to see if you can recognize that the comma is missing. And one of the biggest things that helped me was to look for my conjunction. So, oops, that's not going to work. I thought I could do it. Where is the conjunction? And I knew Boys Fan. I knew those 7 words. The conjunction is right here. And as soon as I saw that, I knew to check to see if I had 2 sentences. It started to rain. That's one thought. I rolled up the window. That's the other thought. So this is a compound sentence, and the comma goes before the conjunction. One other question. Why did I put commas here? Why did I use all of those commas? Which rule have we covered that would cover that one? That's commas in a series. I have 7 words that are the same type of word. They would have this symbol, not nouns, but they're all lined up there in a row. And so I use commas to separate them. And that was the last rule that we needed to cover. So now you're ready to assemble your book, and it will go together like this. And if you need to pause the video, actually I think I'm going to stop this video. It's getting a little bit long. So start with your cover and then line up your rules just like so. And you will staple the top to hold it together. So when you get all of those together, they should line up nicely so that you can still see your tabs. Go ahead and staple that together. And then you can glue it down in your book. We'll talk about that in the next video.